Prime Minister Stewart calls on the U.S. to lift the economic embargo against Cuba. The NCPTA expresses concern about indiscipline in schools. And in sports, Kyron Pollard and the Mumbai Indians on a high in the Indian Champions League.
Credible, balanced, committed. This is the CBC Evening News.
Good evening, I'm Lisa Broom with the Saturday, September 24th edition of the CBC Evening News. In our top story, Barbados has again called for the U.S. economic embargo against Cuba to be lifted. Prime Minister Frendel Stewart says Barbados, along with the Caribbean, will continue efforts to integrate the communist country into the region, but he thinks the U.S. embargo is no longer necessary.
Barbados does not believe that actions such as the decades-long economic embargo aimed at isolating Cuba or any other measures that create greater hardship for the Cuban people will facilitate the full integration which we consider to be both desirable and necessary. My delegation thinks, therefore, that the economic embargo against Cuba has long outlived its usefulness and should be lifted.
Prime Minister Stewart also signaled Barbados' commitment to help with the rebuilding of Haiti following last year's devastating earthquake.
For my delegation, the reconstruction of Haiti, including the rebuilding of its democratic institutions, continues to be a high priority. We fully support the call made in July by the heads of state and government of the Caribbean community for the international community to fulfill their pledges to finance the reconstruction of Haiti following the devastation of the earthquake in January 2010.
Antigua is reporting progress in its online gaming dispute with the United States, but Prime Minister Baldwin Spencer says there is still some way to go before the issue is resolved.
We urge the United States to remain committed to reaching a mutually agreed outcome that will bring value to our economy and is implementable by the United States.
Mr. Spencer also told the United Nations the ongoing financial crisis continues to threaten the region, forcing countries to increase borrowing to survive.
Now more than ever, we need a new sovereign debt restructuring and debt resolution mechanism that takes into account the multiple dimensions of debt sustainability if we are to overcome the current crisis. This seemingly unending economic crisis has affected our countries not only in economic terms, but also through the presence of barriers to trade, as well as the finance embedded in some of the anti-crisis measures adopted by some developed countries.
In other news, there's fresh concern about indiscipline in schools. This time is coming from the Barbados National Council of Parent-Teachers Associations. President Rhonda Blackman says the situation is so worrisome that they're seeking consultation with the Commissioner of Police, Darwin Doughton, to determine how present problems can be dealt with.
Not only in the primary, the secondary schools, but we're seeing this monster in the primary schools. The behavior on the transport board buses, the government has given free transportation, and to us it is as if the children take advantage and they're vandalizing the buses and they're doing stuff. To this end, we recognize this as a problem, and we are supposed to meet with the Commissioner of Police. He's consented to meet with us, where we will sit down and look at strategies to help with the problems on the buses and the behavior of these children after 3 o'clock out of the school environment. But
Ms. Blackman made the comments during a national leadership workshop under the theme Building Stronger Associations at the Barbados Community College this morning. She says the association is working to rebuild the image of the PTAs as more than a fundraiser body.
To this workshop, that we will try to start to reconstruct society's thinking and view of the PTA so that they move away from the notion of the fundraising, but more as a developmental area. We want to equip our members with the skill set that when they go back now and implement it within the structures within their PTA, that the memberships will say, well, look, this bit here has a good structure. Look, there are many benefits to be derived for us, and that it will step up the game and more membership will come out.
Chief Education Officer Laurie King is urging principals to cut out incidents of bullying and children playing rough excessively wherever it exists. He says there is a thin line between the two, but notes that horseplay can result in bullying and that should not be tolerated in schools. He made the comments at the monthly meeting of the Association of Public Primary Schools at the Erdiston Teachers Training College.
The schools have mechanisms in place. We have the Code of Discipline, which was just approved by Parliament, which will be coming into the schools and moving out of the pilot phase into the operational phase, which will provide teachers with a lot of teachers and school administrators with a lot of ammunition in terms of how to deal with disciplinary infractions. So the school has to deal with these matters as the first port of call.
Mr. King says if incidents of bullying warrant the police being called in, this should be done. But he says authorities at the school should always be notified first.
If you go to the police comes back to the school to find out exactly what happened. And that is the responsibility of the school as a first measure to determine exactly what happened and to determine what punishments should be put in place.
Okay.
5 people escaped death when a van and a motor car collided and overturned along Pine East-West Boulevard last night. Andre Sargent, 20 years of Vine Street, St. Michael, Darian Thompson, 15 years of Baycroft New Road, and Kemal Aline, 18 years of number 5 Back Ivy, were the occupants in the motor car. They complained of chest, back and head pains. The motor van involved in the incident was driven by Raymond John of Fire Hill, St. Thomas. He escaped with minor injuries. John's passenger, Jeffrey Oliver, 34 years of Reeves Hill, St. James, complained of pain to the left hand and shoulder. The Environmental Health Department launched an assault on the mosquito and rodent population in parts of St. Philip today. Damien Best was there and files the story.
The Animal Control and Vector Control units, along with environmental officers from the St. Philip Polyclinic, inspected over 600 households and vacant lots today. The areas targeted in St. Philip were Bel-Air, Seaview, Atlantic City, Long Bay and Long Bay Development. Senior officer in the Vector Control Unit, Maurice Gaskin, paid a visit to about 28 homes before noon today. Of that number, 7 tested positive for the Aedes aegypti mosquito.
This is serious because that means that is approximately 25% of the premises visited have been positive. And the World Health Organization have advised that the index, mosquito index, host index should not exceed 1. And we are looking at 25%. And the Beto index should not exceed 5. And that is a lot way past 5.
Chief Environmental Officer Tyrone Applewhite says thanks to the department's geographical information system, they have been able to identify areas where there are reports of mosquitoes and rodents.
Our map depict the rodent complaints follow the same pattern. So that's why we have the rodent control team here this morning to make sure that we identify those areas where there are rodents. We have a distribution center here for rodent bait as soon as possible. We also are identifying this morning areas of like overgrown vegetation or vacant property, derelict cars, derelict vehicles, so that at the end, you should be able to come in with a very good program, coupled with Sanitation Service Authority, to help remove some of the solid waste that we have here in this area, and hopefully we can reduce the number of rodents and any impending leptospirosis that may be associated with them.
The Animal Control Unit was also part of the exercise. After visiting 50 homes, at least 6 were found to have unlicensed dogs. Head of the unit, Curtis Thompson, has some advice for dog owners.
When it comes to food, the food container must look relatively clean, and it must also be free of any remnants. Because as you know, if we have any food scraps remaining, that can be a potential harborage for rats and mice. So the whole aim is not only to license, but to educate and to make sure that management of warm premises is the key.
Telecommunications company Lime had personnel on hand to assist in the inspection effort. At least 30 junction boxes were checked as potential breeding sites for mosquitoes. Of that number, 1 tested positive. The Environmental Health Department's eradication effort will continue for another 3 weekends in St. Philip. Damien Best, CBC News.
Copper thieves in Barbados are on a roll. Their latest victim is a trader of scrap metal and plastic materials. Again, we hear from Damien Best.
Bees Recycling in St. Thomas is reporting that at least 900 pounds of the much sought after copper material was stolen from its compound in the wee hours of Friday morning. The thieves gained entry by cutting a hole in the perimeter fence. Once on the inside, they cut a padlock on the container which stored the copper, then escaped with the metal. Managing Director Paul Bino says evidence suggests that more than one person was involved in the theft, which had a value of about $5,000.
The thing about it is that we have cameras here, and when we check the cameras, one of the cameras also was stolen. Also, the cameras then was faced to shoot in the air and film the sky all night. But when we did play back the footage that we had, we recognized that they come in with mass and whatever, and take away all the copper that we had here on the site.
As one of the collectors of copper on the island, Mr. Bueno says, like him, companies must be vigilant of those selling the metal.
The players like myself in it that would buy copper, and I don't really buy copper the way other people buy it, but the players, if we decide to come with one price, anything under $2 per pound, then the drive for it would not be there. Okay, so then we rest assured that the places like the church and so on wouldn't have to worry, because there are people with copper gutterings, and we don't want to wake up tomorrow morning and hear, there's another church or another building or whatever that copper gone from. So I'm saying to you, if we come together as a unit and say, okay, we buy copper anything under $2 or less than that, I don't think the drive will be there any further.
The latest theft at Bees Recycling follows a similar incident on Friday night at electrical supplies retailer Simmons Electrical, where $95,000 worth of copper cable was stolen in Windward, St. Philip. Damien Best, CBC News.